Well, good morning as we're sitting here at LTV on this beautiful morning, Monday morning, September 30th, year 2024, here with the Hello Hello Show. And my name is Haim Mizrahi, continuing with the tradition of public access and the tradition of the Hello Hello Show that's been on the air since 1980. Of course, not to fail to mention the contribution by Fraser Dougherty, Francis Ann, and then, of course, the likes of you out there that make it your business to enhance and fortify this wonderful concept called public access. Of course, the concept of public access goes hand in hand with the goodwill of the individual that utilizing the possibilities that this concept provides us with and allows us to indulge in. And of course, that goes together with the whole idea of the country that we live in and supports that and encourages it and then of course again on the behalf of the individuals got to be succumbing to the idea of giving out of yourself in order to blend with this concept and bring it to life and make it happen as we do it here 24/7 in the last 44 years. It's unbelievable to think that an individual like Fraser Dougherty and, of course, the support of friends and people who believed in the same concept followed him and aided him and, of course, contributed to the community by making sure that this establishment flourishes as we're doing so as we speak these days, 4.5 decades later. Of course, uh, by way of having such a wonderful heritage of artists in our community, it goes without saying that the results are very evident and the results are accordingly. So we're doing that hand in hand with that concept. And of course, personally speaking, when you go around our neighborhood and our community, you see the wealth um, of creations, of creativity, of believing in a concept of the artistic journey. Each one, every entity, every person that is flourishing on the behalf of uh, that kind of direct implementation of the desire of um, uh, of course, the mustness of creativity, and then when you walk around, you see it pretty evidently. Every turn you take, every which way you choose to believe that indeed that's important. So I do find myself uh, almost bound by the reality that has been kind of coming to life alongside who I perceive myself to be as a person, as an artist, as someone who feels the edge constantly, day in and day out, and feeling like it's a must to be doing something about it. And then when you read the history and when you kind of make yourself familiar with, and then of course, like me, I don't even sleep enough at night, so I have to yawn here. I'm sorry. The limitations of based on the fact of being a human being and what it really means, and we need to sleep after all, and to eat and to take care of ourselves. But lately, I've been spending time in my studio until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and and then waking up at 6, something like that. So there's a, a price to be paid, But I can always find a way to balance things out and to bring to life the vitality that is so much needed on this behalf. I wrote a lot over the weekend, and this writing it's more about quietly wondering about the state of mind and the psyche of our world, of our societies, of our neighborhoods, of people around the world that occupy this planet Earth, and all in the same fashion and manner wonder about the human condition, what it really means, uh, what it really means on the surface, the human condition. As much as I thought about it along the years, I came up with nothing really. The source that we have to invent every time all over again, to make sense, to have it make sense for our own sake. Only so at the end of the day, we will admit to ourselves that we understand nearly nothing, even more than when we started to wonder about it and seek answers. So, but still, we continue to. But anyway, I wrote a lot about it, and I kind of approached it from many directions. Let's see if I can start by suggesting that maybe I know what I'm talking about, and unbelievable. There's some beautiful people out there, I can tell you that. Mm-hmm. Amazing. Oh boy. Oh boy. Mm-mm. Yeah. Yes. The human condition. Yes, that's what I meant to look for that part. With you. Here we go. Plural. Writings and interaction. So yeah. Anyway, so the opener is based on the fact that yeah, well, okay, this is about the after fact of the yeah, okay, no, this is not what I wanted. It appears deeply in the word introspective comes to mind, and sometimes you happen to realize that certain words that you know and understand fairly thoroughly and well are kind of beating about the bush, and you find yourself like actually um, wondering about alternative approaches to find yourself actually making more sense when it comes to understanding the specific steps that you take towards a goal, and sometimes even taking it for granted because you want to base it on the fact that you know yourself better than anyone, and sometimes it's a mistake. So that introspective idea marked by a tension between chaos and order, and simplicity and complexity. And we embrace the unpredictable nature of life, symbolizing by the random smile, and use this unpredictability to explore profound truths, whether through art, poetry, and or the bonds of family and community. And our work as a whole becomes reflecting a search for meaning in the intensity of experience. We provoke simplicity through forms that are often abstract or surreal, pushing the boundaries of expression to evoke deeper clarity. And this reflects our understandings of the human condition as something that is not to be simplified for ease, but rather lived through its full complexity, embracing both the violent and tender aspects of existence. So true. Emotionally, we seem to be drawn to connections that grounds us, um, our family, our children, in community. And these connections are central to our understanding of stability, yearning, and commitment. We recognize the fragility of these bonds, yet we celebrate their strength, finding solace in their constancy amid the unpredictability of life. In essence, we view the human condition as a journey that is not linear or easy, but one that requires engagement with intensity, vulnerability, and dedication to refinement. Our art, writing, and interactions suggest a deep awareness of the balance between freedom and responsibility, spontaneity and purpose, individual expression and collective heritage. And and then, of course, we leave a small opening that in its entirety belongs to us, and we know that we can always like this freestyle rock climbers that their lives hang on a thread, like literally on a thread. Sometimes all they need is just a little crack and a strong, I dare say, even. Thank you for your understanding for my yawning. But I dare say even that little tiny crack that your finger that can really lift the entire weight of your body. It's unbelievable, actually. It's actually, for me, it's the ultimate. When you see that, you realize this kind of complete control and this kind of concentration of muscle that can support so much. It's like almost too good to be true. So it's in my eyes for many years was just impossible. So that little opening really can help you climb and carry your weight up into the thin air, and then find liberty, find complete self uh, realizations, and increase the familiarity of yourself, about yourself, of who you are, what you stand for, what you're all about. Even though we think we know ourselves, so that means we don't need to ask the questions. But that's uh, not not the case, really. And the second part, let me just dig it out, is um, refining uh, in a an unknown industrial fashion. Yes, unknown industrial fashion. In an unknown intensity leading to simplicity. There's so many aspects. It's amazing how, in my eyes, it's amazing how there are not so much more people who write poetry or who thinks that it's a good idea to write poetry. And of course, the capability is there. There's no doubt. I'm not contemplating and thinking whether people can or cannot. But whether people want or do not want. So it seems refining fashion, an unknown industrial fashion, refining it. That seems to align with our broader theme of intensity leading to simplicity, yet with an element of raw, almost mechanical force. It suggests a process that is less about delicacy and more about a rigorous, unyielding, yes, indeed, rigorous, unyielding um, shaping of ideas, emotions, or materials into something profound and essential. In this context, uh, it's as though the act of refinement isn't a careful polishing, but a relentless stripping away of excess using industrial, almost impersonal methods. I like how industrial makes it helps you. I can find yourself doing becoming impersonal, which is very helpful to help you externalize much more than otherwise being kind of keeping to yourself in the name of I don't know if some people are shy, some people are reluctant, and so many more reasons in that sense. So yet it is stripping away using um, using industrial, almost impersonal methods, yet achieving something uniquely personal and meaningful by the end. So, this unknown industrial process could reflect the unpredictability and intensity that we channel in our work, forcing out new forms of clarity through harsh, sometimes brutal, creative methods. In this idea of mechanical intensity, and there is such a thing as mechanical intensity, something that we see emerging in our art is the question is this mechanical intensity is something that we see emerging in our art or writing right now, like in the face of that kind of wondering. And there is an answer that I give to this. Uh, let's see if I can find it and add to it. Interpretation. Of understanding, resting on the fifth level. That's what I want to. Let's see. It's so nice that you can just dig out from my library everything. It's almost too crazy, but it's real. If we move to the second interpretation of the fourth layer, and there is such a thing actually, if you think about it, second interpretation, fourth layer, that means there were two interpretations taking place while four layers were accumulating. Resting at the fifth level, we are stepping into a more subtle, almost subconscious territory. Why is it subconscious? Because we know we need to let it be as much as we can. Otherwise, if we try only us with our own strength and knowledge and experience to erect a multiple layered scenario when it comes to especially painting, we will fail. We will fail not because we won't succeed. We will fail because we won't get what we want out of it that we know we can. So, in that sense, it's so in this subconscious territory, where the process becomes less overt and more about the unyielding principle guiding that refinement. Here, it's not about brute force or mechanical stripping, but a quieter, more intuitive refinement that happens through a deeper understanding of form and essence. And at this level, the industrial metaphor may shift from the external machinery to an internal system of recalibration, a process driven not by external tools, but by an unseen internal engine of awareness. The fourth layer suggests a depth of understanding that isn't visible on immediate or immediately apparent, isn't mm, but it drives the choices and distills the essence of what matters. By the time this rests at the fifth level, there's a kind of balance achieved where the chaotic refining process finds its resolution in unexpected form of equilibrium. This interpretation aligns with our journey toward, of course, self-awareness and our exploration of how to refine the provoke simplicity. Provoke. I like the fact that it's actually provoking and not creating. And provoking simplicity through intensity, but now with more reliance on instinct, subtlety, and a deeper trust in the process itself. Uh, so we need to really to start thinking about how does resonates with us when it comes to um, our work and creative process. So much needed, really. If you think about it, this is the only chance we have to snap out of it and to can eliminate the potential of a really big uh, thing that will kind of put an end to everything. Why should it? Why should we allow it? Really? So, as a painter, if you're able to accumulate layers, then you can actually accumulate those layers of understanding when it comes to philosophy, your own kind of self-made, invented, put together scenario of rationale, while the love of wisdom is fermenting constantly and you know within you very deep that you can do without, even without the love of wisdom, or without declaring that indeed that's the case. So, um, so how do we interpret it in the face of the love of wisdom? That's a tough one. Um, let's see. Uh, a deeper trust in the process itself. In the process itself. Yeah, so I think now we're entering the realm of being willing to be guided by, and it doesn't matter what follows the word by. So interpreting this in the face of a deeper trust in the process itself suggests a profound shift from forceful control to allowing the unknown to guide you. It becomes less about actively shaping the outcome and more about surrendering to the refinement that happens naturally, trusting that the process, however chaotic or obscure, will lead you to the right clarity. And at this level, refinement is no longer a battle or a struggle. Instead, it becomes an acceptance that the industrial mechanisms, the unseen forces, are at work within you, and your role is to guide and respond rather than dictate. The unknown industrial fashion is now less about external machinery and more about an internal evolution that operates on in the background, shaping ideas and emotions, um, without needing your constant interference, of course. And that's actually a key factor because we can't help ourselves. This deep trust allows you to let go of needing to see the outcome or even understand every layer as it's happening. You begin to realize that the process, though sometimes violent or intense, is working towards a purpose you don't always need to see immediately. In this way, refinement becomes not just a tool of creation, but a lived experience and an unfolding of meaning, coherence, and simplicity. And that's, of course, over time. In trusting this process, we might find that the creative work or personal insights emerge more naturally with a quiet assurance that the layers beneath will reveal themselves when needed. So, the question to ask, does this really uh, speak to the more subtle shifts that we're feeling in our work, especially our creations, if we're creative people? And we're all creative people, but I'm talking about those who are creative that are actually doing something about it, actually writing poems, actually painting paintings, actually playing music, all of that, all kind of mediums come together and to make it more real. Um, but here I'm continuing, but trying to cut to the chase, or through the chase. Well, actually, um, to the chase, even though there's uh, that any adjustment is needed at all. And so cutting to the chase and trusting the process means letting go of the need to constantly adjust or interfere. And it's such a big deal in that process of in creativity. And even if there's no visible conflict, we're drawn to the idea of refinement. But this trust implies that maybe no adjustments are necessary. It's about recognizing that things may already be on the right path, even if it feels unfinished or chaotic. In other words, it's not about fixing or tweaking, but it's about accepting that what's emerging is already aligned, even if it's not immediately obvious. Sometimes no action is the best action, really, and the process will unfold as it should. And that's, of course, without your intervention. But intervention is not something that we can just get rid of. We want to have a say. We want to give a little bit to ourselves in order to say, okay, you know what? The result will show that we are present there. Our psyche, our energy is evident in all this. But I don't know where it's going to lead us, really. And I'm more kind of hands on, and I want to put my spell into it and kind of allow it enough freedom to realize itself. But actually, what it will be doing is like realizing who I am as a person and inflicting it on that which will be implemented and that which will come to life on the behalf of it, on the result of it. So altogether, altogether, shifting is the only viable solution. Even though, again, even though I love this word sometimes, they are available in abundance. So the abundance of available options or solutions really doesn't necessarily mean they should be acted upon. Instead, shifting becomes the only viable solution, not in terms of forcing change, but in allowing yourself to flow with the natural evolution of things. It's about understanding that movement is happening beneath the surface, even in stillness. The abundance of alternatives can distract, but the real key lies in embracing the shift that feels organic, not out of necessity, but out of alignment with the deeper process. So, you want to bring, I think I managed after that in the next segment to bring everything together into one kind of logical statement, so to speak, even though I personally try as hard as I can to shy away from statements. But for some reason, every time I do that, I end up coming up with more statements, even more so. Um, so now we're elaborating. Oh yeah, that's so. So we were talking about the evolution of thought and process. I mean, this is really for the last what half an hour, and particularly in how we understand and interact with the concept of refinement. Oh boy, is it important! I think I should get myself a little more sleep the night before. So, so we began by exploring the perspective of, the exploring of the perspective of our perspective on the human condition, where we noted, that the tension in our work between simplicity and complexity, chaos and order, and then we are going through a process of clarification that this wasn't quite hitting the mark, leading us deeper into more specific ideas about refinement, especially in an unknown industrial fashion. Can't believe you managed to talk so much about already. Mentioning of refining in an unknown industrial fashion shifted the conversation to a more metaphorical interpretation of how we approach creative and personal processes. In this metaphor, the notion of refinement wasn't the careful, delicate um, polishing typically associated with the term, but rather something more raw, intense, and almost mechanical. Um, I personally often spoke about provoking simplicity through intensity, and this seemed to align well with the idea. However, as you note yourselves, I'm sure you do, let's say we note, it wasn't quite as extreme as we might have predicted it to be. This opened the door to further layers of interpretation where we sought a more nuanced understanding. And then we brought to the surface, we brought it up, the second interpretation of the fourth layer of understanding, resting by the fifth level. This phrase pointed to a deeper, more subtle layer of thought, something less about outward force and more about an internal shift. I think there's a nice balance there. And in this context, refinement took on a quieter, almost instinctive form, where the process was no longer about external shaping, but an internal recalibration. I would say that's a good word. and a kind of subconscious adjustment that guides our work and decisions without needing that over control. At this point, we begin to discuss the role of trust in the process itself, I mean, which is crucial, super crucial. The idea here was that by letting go of the need to actively adjust and refine, you often yourself you open yourself to a deeper, more natural evolution rather than constantly manipulating this work or the process. We allow things to unfold in their own way, trusting that the unseen forces of at play, the industrial mechanisms, will shape things as they need to be. This trust in the process is not about relinquishing all control, but about recognizing when to step back and let the refinement happen on its own behalf. Then we brought up the idea of cutting to the chase, which is always a good thing to do at some point, suggesting that even though there may not be an apparent conflict, we were still thinking about adjustments. However, trusting the process meant letting go of the need to make those adjustments, recognizing that sometimes the act of doing nothing is the most important action. In a sense, this is about aligning with the deeper flow, acknowledging that sometimes the process is working even when it seems like it's not. The apparent need for refinement, for constant tweaking and improvement, may not be necessary at all if you trust that things are already on the right path. And then finally, we arrive to the idea that shifting is the only viable solution, even though there is an abundance of available options. So maybe that is not needed, but actually it is. This seemed to bring everything full circle, understanding that while there are always many alternatives and paths you could take, that you could take, the real answer lies in shifting your perspective and allowing the process to unfold naturally. The abundance of options becomes irrelevant when you recognize that the internal shift, moving in sync with the natural evolution of the process, is the most effective and authentic path. Um, so it's nice to have an ability to think about the process of refinement because it is very helpful if you think about it. Super helpful, actually. Refinement, trust and alignment. Uh, and we quickly enough, I think, realized that um, the creative and philosophical approach to life often involves navigating complexity and chaos, finding simplicity through intensity, and embracing spontaneity. And then this conversation has been about refining that approach, not through force or control, but through deeper trust in the unknown, in the unfolding process. It's a recognition that while the urge to act, adjust, or refine may be strong, sometimes the most profound outcomes come from stepping back and letting the deeper unseen processes to do the work. Shifting in this context isn't about making a deliberate change. It's about allowing the shift that's already happening to come into a full view. That's always a good idea. I like that whole idea. I just wanted to mention we're sitting here on Monday morning, September 30th. I cannot believe that we're actually entering the month of October. Unbelievable. But we welcome the month of October, as the month of September was super successful, especially here at LTV, and it's uh, a great um, reassuring factor when you're part of an establishment and a concept and a process. They just all work together and all kind of super, super, super artistic and creative by nature. Can't ask for more. So here is the scenario of when you try to kind of provoke a conclusion by way of statement after you already had a full account of that of that finality, but it seemed to be not enough. And when it's not enough, it's not enough. It's very personal. So you cannot. One thing you cannot do in these scenarios, which is great, is to critique, to say, "Oh, our opinion is that you're wrong, or you're right, or you're too much of this, too much of that." So um, on top of what had been said already, how do we find the explosive? Dreaming about the recommended heights. Uh, uh, uh. Of the recommended height. Of, of the. Okay. So, okay. And here is the building on what we discussed. Let's just say now, if we can call it a discussion, even though it's kind of more of a monologue, kind of reassuring myself. And by the way, interacting with you while I'm doing that. Building on what we've discussed, finding the explosive trimming of the recommended height that you can live with. It brings us to an idea of a sudden forceful release, a moment where restraint or subtle shifts give way to an intense immediate action or realization. This is the point where the refinement that has been brewing beneath the surface bursts through a decisive sharp cut or trim. The 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 height, the height, could symbolize a rapid escape of movement towards something final, an accelerated push to resolution. This explosive trimming doesn't contradict the trust in the process, that process that we've been discussing, but rather complements it. It represents the culmination of the quiet subconscious refinement that we have explored, the moment when all the layers of trust, internal recalibration, and organic shifts converge into a dramatic final action. At this stage, the abundance of alternatives or the subtle internal shifts crystallizes into something clear and and, uh, and forceful. The process has been trusted and allowed to unfold, but when the time comes for action, this heightened moment, so to speak, for lack of a better word, um, it's executed with precision, cutting away what's necessary with explosive force. This action isn't premature or chaotic, but rather a natural conclusion of everything that's been quietly building. And and to put a cherry on top of all this, let me get to that section here. Uh, represents a grieving moment without or melancholia of any sort, of any kind. Well, we don't need the S here. So it's the question that evolves to become a wondering, the wondering evolves to become a question, things like that. you know, I once came up with a sentence that was called R of the is. The R of the is, ARE of the is. To not R of the is in this context seems to suggest disengaging from the present state of overthinking or forcing control. If we apply this to the idea of toning down a grieving moment without sadness or melancholia, it points to a more natural, even peaceful acknowledgement of loss or transition, a recognition of change or endings without the heaviness typically associated with grief. In this interpretation, the process is not about suppressing emotions, but reframing them. It's about finding a way to experience the gravity of the moment without being consumed by sorrow or melancholy. This aligns with the idea of refinement and the explosive trimming we discussed earlier, if you remember. where there is a sharp, decisive release of resolution that doesn't rely on dwelling in the emotional weight of sadness. I nailed it there, especially with the word dwelling. I'll repeat it, I'll read it again. So, this is all that aligns with the idea of refinement and the explosive trimming, where there's a sharp, decisive release of resolution that doesn't rely on dwelling in the emotional weight of sadness. Grieving without what it's all about when you say grieving without sadness and melancholia. Grieving without sadness or melancholia. That could be seen as a form of acceptance rather than being rather than overtaken by grief. We acknowledge the transition or the loss of a part of a natural process, trusting in its necessity. It's a recognition that the moment of loss or change does not need to be bathed in sorrow. It can simply be a moment of clarity, a peaceful letting go, much like the explosive trimming that cuts away what is no longer needed without hesitation or regret. In essence, this approach calls for a refinement of how grief is processed. It's not about dulling the emotional response, but rather shifting away from sadness as the primary vehicle of expression instead. As the primary expression. Instead, it becomes about a calm, almost detached recognition of the moment, acknowledging the significance of what is passing without falling into the depth of melancholia. This may seem paradoxical, but it's a way of holding space for grief without being weighted down by it, and allowing the transition to be clear, almost serene experience, much like trusting the process of creative refinement that we discussed throughout our conversation, actually monologue. Anyway, wanted to just say we're going to be here tomorrow as much as we were here yesterday and as much as we're here this morning, Monday morning, September 30th, year 2024, here with the Hello Hello Show. And my name is Haim Mizrahi. The ongoing art exhibition that's on display is on display until the second week of October. Don't miss it. It's really a beautiful, beautiful show. We are actually already working on the next one for the starting in the beginning of the third week of October, and we can't wait. The level of creativity here at LTV is unstoppable, and we would like to thank you for your patience, for your contribution, for your demeanor, for your psyche, for your willingness to contribute and to participate and to bring us from all these wonderful jewels that describe who you are and what you're all about. And we are proud to have you here with us. And we thank you for that. And we're sending you our love. Have a beautiful day. We'll see you sooner than later.